Hi everyone, it's Sheila Kamara Hay of Ecstatic Birth, and I am so excited for today's conversation to transform birth. I'm here with midwife Robin Illian. Hi, Robin.
Hi.
And today's topic is intensity, like intensity in labor, right? Because let's get real, childbirth can be intense. And some of the most intense moments in labor happen when you are dilating as wide as you're going to dilate. Your cervix is, approaching 10 centimeters. You're about to get that urge to push. And this moment, which is known as transition, is also the moment where so many women are just like, I can't do this anymore, right? So we're going to talk about how can even this most intense moment in labor and delivery, how can this moment still be really pleasurable? And I'm so excited to introduce you to Robin because Robin has experience with this on like a lot of different levels. So I came to know Robin when she was the midwife for a client of mine. And I don't know what she saw there, but she was like, oh, I think I need to learn more about ecstatic birth. And then when she was pregnant with her own child, dove into the ecstatic birth training sessions where she really learned about this spot that she's going to talk to you about today, and has since been able to support a lot of her clients in it. And she's also in the ecstatic birth practitioner training. So needless to say, I love this woman. Welcome, Robin. Again, thank you. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing your wisdom with us. And I would love for you to just start by talking about like that spot. Like, how did you discover that spot? How did you open that spot? What did that spot feel like? Just go for it.
Great. Thanks, Sheila. And thanks so much for pushing the boundaries on all of this. Because even for myself of attending birth as a home birth midwife for the last 15 years and teaching midwifery, this is really revolutionary point of view. And even in my birth community, it's something that a lot of folks shy away from. So I'm happy to talk about this and share about it. And the spot that you mentioned, I learned about it, like you said, at first, and I think I knew about it in other ways, but it really was like a huge light bulb moment for me in the Ecstatic Birth Body series. Sherry Winston does a talk, and I first listened to it when I was quite pregnant, and she has slides that go with it, so slides of the pelvic anatomy, and I teach that anatomy to midwifery students, but yet I had never looked at it in the way that she was explaining it, because it's really not out there in textbooks. Like, anatomy textbooks don't talk about real female anatomy in terms of the arousal and erectile network and the nerves and what they do, and the capacity of what our bodies can do. So it was really exciting to learn from Sherry about how in a deep state of arousal, the uterus kind of moves up and forward, and when as it does that, gets the cervix out of the way and reveals this kind of bowl, this area in the back of the vagina that first of all, there's a lot of space. And I think women and birthing people learning about the amount of space they actually have in their bodies can be really empowering, because people like to be like, it's like getting a watermelon out of a a straw or something. It's not like that, actually. Our bodies are amazing and have huge capacity to be huge and to expand, and to be soft, and to let that baby pass. But this bowl in the pelvis is there for us, and there's many nerves, but the one nerve that I was excited to learn about was the pelvic nerve. And again, I urge everybody to check out Sherry Winston's work. She has Women's Anatomy of Arousal is a great text, and then the talks that she does for Sheila or with Sheila are really informative. But this made me realize, so when someone's in an aroused state, the cervix moving out of the way exposes this area, exposes this nerve, and that's when deep penetration can feel really good. And if you translate that to when a baby's coming out, that's the same position that the uterus is in. The cervix is out of the way because it's fully dilated or almost fully dilated, and the baby's head can kind of come into this bowl and hit that nerve. And mostly we talk about that nerve in the context of, oh, you feel the pressure on the nerve and then you feel like you have to poop. So that's one way that that one sensation that the nerve gives, but there also is capacity for pleasure there, for it to feel good when that baby's head is first coming out and hitting that nerve. And I think just having the knowledge about that and the ability to explore that before you're in the position of a baby's head hitting that nerve can actually train your body and create neural pathways of pleasure in that spot. So, you know, maybe for some people, they're going to spontaneously feel pleasure. And I have seen that in clients. We do usually talk about the intensity of transition. So transition is the part of labor, those last couple centimeters of dilation. As you said, you're open wide. There's so much sensation. The contractions are usually back to back. And for some folks, it's a real, almost like an out of body time, not in a negative way or a dissociative way, but in a spiritual connecting kind of a way. And then suddenly it changes, hence the transition, to start feeling these really grounding sensations of that need to push. And I've had, the first time I really heard about it was actually many years ago at a birth, the first time, and she said afterwards, she had this really great labor and birth, all very normal. And afterwards she said, you know, I kind of felt like I was cheating when I first was feeling the urge to push. And I was like, what do you mean by cheating? She said, well, I didn't tell anybody that I had this little feeling and it felt really good. And then I was just kind of secretly pushing a little bit. And the way she described it was like, I think that's true in our culture. We tend to not share the good parts, and especially if it feels good to us. I wish more people would talk about that part, that has the capacity to feel really good. And you may hear people talk about how, oh, I loved pushing or something I could do, but it's nice to even deepen that a little more and talk about that potential for real pleasure from the way that pelvic nerve is exposed and the head can make contact.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing voice to that and for really sharing it, because I think, again, it's like if you don't even know that that's possible, how can you look for it? How can you feel for it? How can you open to that possibility, right? And yeah, like this idea of, okay, you know that you can expect a certain sensation, like you were talking about, okay, you can expect to feel like you have to poop. Well, you know, when you're giving birth and you're so connected to your body, you're so connected to the sensations, there's only so much of a roadmap you have, right? There's the roadmap of what, you know, your midwife or OB or your mom or your sister or your doula, like what the people around you have told you. And you're sort of trying to locate yourself as best you can via that map. So to have this area like now on the map through you sharing it, it's so powerful. And you know, one thing that you said, which really I think is important, is about when you're really aroused, right? Your cervix moves out of the way. And I think, you know, for people that are still kind of trying to understand, like, how could this even be? If you think about like deep penetration, like really deep penetration, let's say when you're not really aroused, like how that can feel a little like, yikes, right? But when you are aroused, like there's so much satisfaction in it. Like it can feel so good. And even grounding, like you said, that's how you can relate it. And I think it's interesting to be able to relate our anatomy, birth and sex, bring it together. And Sherry does a really, really amazing job of that in women's anatomy of arousal. Robin, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit, like, you know, the way you share this spot with your clients so that they could locate it, just to give women more, if there's anyone expecting that's watching this or other birth workers, how they could sort of like guide their women into opening to the sensations available there.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely recommend practicing before labor to kind of finding this spot. And so I would even just recommend that in a self-pleasuring session where you are exploring your own body and to find that bowl, like that opening space in the back of the vagina, that really is not talked about in books. And I know for me, when I first found it, I think this is true for women, we tend to be like, oh, this must be something weird about me. But then no, when you do more research, like this is actually an amazing part of our anatomy. So, finding out also, it's a great exploration, like what is it that gets you to such a deep state of arousal that your uterus does move out of the way? And that's great information for anything, with a partner, for your sexuality. and then later for birth. But to find that area, and then to use fingers to really create, I think of it as creating a neural pathway. Like they even tell amputees to do this. This is a different kind of way to think about it. But you know, when you lose part of your limb, your body doesn't know that you have this new area here, and that in order to help it learn, it'll eventually learn. But you can make that quicker by just rubbing it. And so that's true. Just using your fingers, just using touch and sensation of like, yeah, this is the back of what I call the bowl, or the posterior vagina, to be more technical. You find your own term, but here's where my pelvic nerve is, or here's where there's this potential for pressure, pleasure. And then also to explore for female-bodied folks, for folks that will be birthing, is in orgasm to play around with that pushing, that bearing down. And how can bearing down be pleasurable? And I think that's also tied to that area, and to so much of the erectile network. And in general, that's helpful, again, to connect that pushing with pleasure and engorgement. The more aroused and engorged our tissues are, the softer and more open they're going to be. So that
you just made me think of something. I know that in some sexual expansion modalities, when they're trying to teach a woman, let's say, how to have an orgasm or have multiple orgasms, a big piece of that is, how do you manage the intensity of the sensations, pleasure, and also the intensity of like the energy flowing through you. And this is a big part of birth, right? Like you have so much intense energy flowing through you and so much intense sensation. And one of the things that I've heard is, hey, try bearing down. Like when things get too intense, bear down.
Yeah.
And that's a way, because what happens when you're in the midst of intensity, you start to clench and you start to like pull your energy up. And so bearing down allows it to move through you. So that was very interesting that you just said that.
Nice.
Really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to translate that to birth, I think it's just all about having folks around you that can help remind you in the moment. I mean, birth, like you said, is so intense, and transition is one of the most intense parts of it. Having folks there to remind you to take your breaks, or to notice your breaks, because you can get kind of caught up, and to invite you in a way that works for you to find the parts that feel good, because they're in there, but it's a huge whole lot of sensation, and we're not really used to in our lives running that much energy and sensation through our bodies. So it can be misread as whatever. Like if you're programmed to think this is going to be the most painful thing, then it can easily feel like the most painful thing. But if you can invite in another sensation or suggestion, that's huge. And it may not look really different from the outside. So I actually, in preparation for this, went back to look at my own birth video of my second birth, kind of like, because I had written about it after. I wrote about how I found that spot and how it felt good in that right before I started pushing. And I was like, maybe I can see it from the outside if I go back and look at the video. And I can maybe tease it out, but it was a reminder of what an internal experience it is. And we really don't know on the outside, for the most part, what someone is feeling. And actually for me, it was sandwiched, because it was transition and because my labor went so fast. Those moments of where I had asked my husband ahead of time to like remind me, right? So he did, and it really helped to have that reminder. And I was able to feel at the end of these huge contractions, this little like, ooh, that feels really good right there. And then kind of use that to help me soften and prepare for the next one. And it also made me feel so much closer to him in that moment too. It opened me in this different way. Sure enough, like I had 2 huge contractions, then I threw up in a bowl. Like it's intensity, right? And that's a thing of transition. It's like you mentioned that I can't do it anymore, that a lot of people will say, or throwing up or sweating or shaking or whatever. It's a huge body moment. And that pelvic nerve is being hit and the vagus nerve is being hit, hence why a lot of people throw up in that moment. It's a trigger of a nerve. So, I'm having this amazing like intensity and there's this pleasure, and then I'm like, get the bowl, and then, the next contraction in between. Thankfully, I think someone gave me some water, but I was like having some really great deep kissing with my husband, which helped me soften even more. So there's so much going on, as you said, in those intense moments, but to invite in the option of something feeling good is amazing.
And I think it's so powerful to hear you share about your experience, because I think a lot of times when I talk about ecstatic birth or people hear about the possibility of pleasure in birth, they can't bridge the two. And in the description that you just gave, it's like, oh, okay, like I can see how there's like this dance happening. There's this dance. There's so much intensity, but there's so much potential for pleasure too. And I know that another spot where women tend to feel a lot of pleasure if they are open to it is when the baby's head descends and presses up against the G-spot. Mm-hmm. And that's a spot that, for a lot of women who haven't built out like the neural pathways there for pleasure, that can feel really painful because that's a very tender spot. But for women who have built out the neural pathways, that can feel really pleasurable. And I remember reading about a study, I think it was out of Rutgers University a few years ago, that was talking about how our bodies are amazing. When the baby's head presses down against the G-spot, it can actually decrease the level of pain. Like, oh, okay, yeah, exactly. And take it a step further. Not only can it decrease the level of pain, but it can also increase the level of pleasure. And this really needs to get talked about more, because I can't tell you how many women will say to me, oh my gosh, like, thank you so much. I had an orgasm during birth and I felt so ashamed. I thought I did something wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's all there. Our anatomy is there. It's like learning how to use it. And the first way to learn how to use it is to know it even exists.
And I'm curious for you, as somebody who has witnessed many women give birth and who teaches other midwives, do you think it's necessary for the birth to be overtly sexual in order for a woman to experience these levels of pleasure?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. It's sensual and is really different than sexual.
Yeah.
And it is a very sensual experience in that your senses are heightened. And so pleasure can be part of that, but it doesn't have to be, not everybody's going to want the sexy vibe. Not everybody has that connection with their partner. Some people want their mom and all their kids in the room, and that's not where they're feeling the sexiest, but they can still feel really powerful sensations, including pleasure. Mm-hmm. And it really rises oxytocin, right? And we need oxytocin to give birth. It's also the hormone of love and bonding. So you get it from sex, but you also get it from hugging your kid, which is not sexual.
I'm so glad that you shared that, because I think that's another place where people get tripped up. Like, I'm going to be in the hospital with a doctor, or I'm going to have other people in the room. How in the world could I have this like sexual experience? And the fact that it just doesn't have to be that way, that you can use your tools of like breath, sound, and movement in ways that really make you feel good and amplify your senses, as you said, right?
Right, and use it as a natural pain reliever. I mean, pleasure as a natural pain reliever. If yes, those are sensations that are triggered with sex and orgasm, but it's also, let's use it because right now there's a big head that's coming out of the vagina, and if we've got natural pain reliever in that area, then yeah, let's tune into that. Yeah. So, however, it can be so sexy, or it can be not. It can be just one of your tools that you're using in your embodied experience.
Yeah. And that's really important, I think, for people to know, because it can really be that simple. Like, it can really be as simple as like, whoa, this is intense. Like, let me manage that intensity with some pleasure. And then that's a win-win, because that supports the rhythm of your labor. Yeah. All right. So for any like birth workers that are watching this, what would you recommend if they wanted to bring this conversation of pleasure to their clients? Like, how has it been when you share it with your clients? Do you find that women are receptive, or it's tricky? How do you navigate all of that?
I usually start by asking in the beginning of care, like, if they're interested in talking about the connection between sexuality and birth. And there are some clients that just are not. And if they are, then great, let's dive into that a little more. And sharing your resources, Sheila, like getting them to sign up to get all those really great, like free little nuggets that you give, and hopefully maybe they'll dive in for more. For birth workers, I'd recommend Sherry Winston's book, The Women's Anatomy of Arousal, for sure. And for them to listen to the training series. I mean, I think it's been really helpful for me to get a perspective shift, because we can get kind of bogged down as birth workers into all the details of everything else that we're carrying, that we can forget how much our energy and what we're open to exploring can really influence our clients and give them permission to explore something they might not otherwise explore.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share how you taking the step to like really embody the pleasure for yourself in the practitioner training, how that's affected your work.
Yeah.
Or your personal life as well.
Yeah, I mean, the practitioner training has been all about me as the practitioner and connecting to my body, which is huge. I mean, we all know, and I knew already as a practitioner, that my energy is contagious in the birthing field, and that birthing people and women are so open, so they feel on an even subtle level, but sometimes on a bigger level, how everyone in the room is feeling. So it's been a great reminder, and I've gotten a lot of great tools from you, Sheila, of how to just like drop into my body and be connected to that in myself, so that can be the energy that's coming into the room.
Awesome. Thank you, Robin, so much for coming and sharing this today. I think it's such a gift. It's a gift to moms to know that this is possible. It's a gift to practitioners to know that they can start to weave this conversation into their work. And it's really just a gift to the field of birth, because that's what we're all trying to do, is like elevate it so that women can enter motherhood feeling really good and empowered.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sheila, for making it possible. It's been fun.
All right. Lots of love. Thanks everyone for watching.
Bye.
Bye.